Destiny rarely announces itself before it strikes. More often, it arrives disguised as something harmless, a quiet afternoon. A family invitation that seems innocent enough, a meeting no one expects and no one prepares for. Yet such moments have a peculiar power, they alter everything. That was how the day began for James and Diep, unaware that every step they took was guiding them slowly and inexorably toward a truth that had slept for decades, waiting patiently for the precise moment to awaken. The air that afternoon carried an unusual stillness. It was not silence, but something heavier, almost watchful. From the moment Diep crossed the threshold of the old house, she felt a tightness in her chest, as if the walls themselves were holding their breath, guarding secrets that did not wish to be disturbed. James walked beside her, attempting calm, attempting reassurance. Yet his hands betrayed him, restless, tense, clasping and unclasping as if searching for something solid to hold on to. They had come with a simple purpose, to formally introduce their families, convinced that time, patience, and goodwill could resolve anything. And yet, deep within their shared glance, there lived an unease neither could name. That quiet intuition, the one that surfaces only when something important is about to unfold. A look that opened the past when Diep's mother appeared. Time itself seemed to slow. Her steps were measured, deliberate. Her face bore the marks of a difficult life, and in her eyes lingered a melancholy that had never fully left her. At the opposite end of the room, James's father rose slowly from his seat. It took only an instant. One exchange of glances was enough for the past to slip, uninvited, into the present. The silence thickened, becoming almost unbearable, as if everyone in the room were breathing the same forgotten memory. James noticed it immediately, the stiffness in his father's shoulders, the way his words faltered, the way his gaze returned again and again to that woman's face. Diep felt a chill crawl up her spine. Something in her mother's expression felt disturbingly familiar. Like a wound reopened, one that had never truly healed, conversation moved forward with difficulty. Forced smiles, short sentences, each word seemed weighed, each gesture burdened with hidden meaning. James and Diep exchanged silent looks, trying to decipher what no one dared to say aloud. Sometimes, life places us before truths we never ask to know, but need in order to understand who we truly are. That day, it was not merely two families facing one another, it was two generations colliding, shaped by past decisions. Unfinished loves, painful renunciations, and prolonged silences, all of it had woven an invisible net, now tightening around James and Diep. Without words, both understood, this day would divide their lives into before and after. Because there are moments that force us to confront what we have inherited, to question what we once believed secure, and to decide whether we will repeat the story, or find the courage to write a new one. As the sun dipped lower, painting the sky in gold and gray, James and Diep realized destiny had already laid its cards on the table. Now, it was their turn to decide how to play the most important hand of their lives. The weight of what was not said, the tension suspended in the air after that first encounter did not fade with the passing hours. Instead, it grew heavier, like a low-hanging cloud that followed every movement within the house. James felt that something had broken silently, something invisible, yet irreversible. As he gathered the barely touched teacups, he watched his father from the corner of his eye. The man sat motionless, gaze distant, as if pulled back into a time he had never fully escaped. Diep, meanwhile, was restless. Her mother had spoken little, far too little for someone who had always found words. That night, alone at last in the small bedroom, Diep gathered the courage to ask. Even in the hardest moments. Her voice was a whisper, trembling with fear. Not directly, she wanted to know why her mother had gone pale upon seeing James's father. Why her hands had shaken in that unmistakably human, painfully vulnerable way. The answer did not come immediately. There was only silence, broken by the wind striking the windows. James sought answers of his own. He found his father in the courtyard, cigarette after cigarette glowing in the dark. As if each breath of smoke might erase memories that refused to stay buried, when James mentioned Diep's mother by name, his father's expression hardened. No full confessions. There were no accusations, only fragmented truths, words that stopped just before revealing too much. In that moment, James understood something fundamental. The past does not always die. Sometimes, it simply learns how to hide. Sleeplessness and recognition. The hours crept forward, and the house seemed to shrink beneath the weight of unspoken truths. James and Diep met again at the doorway, unsure how to look at one another. The love remained, intact, undeniable. But now it was surrounded by uncomfortable questions and incomplete truths. Both felt as though they were walking on fragile ground, where a single misstep could shatter everything. Diep replayed fragments of her childhood, details once insignificant, now unsettlingly clear. That night, sleep refused them. James revisited every gesture of his father, every silence. Attempting to reconstruct a story that had never been told to him, he realized that growing up also meant confronting the shadows of those who gave us life. At dawn, something had shifted between them. There were no grand declarations, no promises. They simply held hands more tightly, aware that the road ahead would be far more difficult than they had imagined. Life, as it often does, had delivered its quiet reminder: loving is not always simple. Sometimes it means carrying wounds that are not our own, and deciding whether we are willing to heal them together. Conversations that changes. The following morning arrived with a deceptive calm. Sunlight filled the courtyard as if nothing extraordinary had occurred. Diep was the first to rise. But inside, the storm persisted. She prepared breakfast with mechanical precision, clinging to routine to avoid drowning in her thoughts. Each sound, the knife against the cutting board, the water boiling, seemed to amplify the unanswered questions. When her mother appeared, her eyes carried an old fatigue, not only from the night before. They sat across from each other, and this time, it was her mother who spoke first. But from years of silence, a youthful love, with fragments, not with details, paths that diverged without clear goodbyes. Decisions made out of fear. Diep listened with a constricted heart, realizing her own life had been woven with threads she had never seen. James, walking with his father along a nearby path, learned something similar. After a long silence, his father finally stopped and spoke, quietly acknowledging unresolved pasts. Buried guilt, and the fear that his mistakes might now reach his son. James felt anger, yes, but also compassion. He understood that parents fail too, that they do not always know how to protect the ones they love. Choosing not to run, they met again at dusk. The sky burned in shades of orange and violet, mirroring their confusion. This time, they spoke without interruption, honestly, painfully, what they feared. They shared what they had learned. What they did not yet know how to face. Long silences. There were tears, moments when they wondered if love would be enough. And yet, within that vulnerability, something new emerged, a shared decision not to flee. They could not change their parents' pasts, but they could choose whether to let those pasts tear them apart. That night, the house felt different, not because all answers had been found, but because they had stopped avoiding the questions. Diep felt, for the first time, that she truly knew her mother. James looked at his father with new eyes, understanding that respect can coexist with disappointment. Life rarely offers absolute certainty. Often, it forces us forward with incomplete truths and hearts full of doubt. Perhaps that is its greatest lesson. Growing up means learning to live with what hurts. Choosing forgiveness, of others and of ourselves, and continuing on even when the path remains unclear. Learning to value what is here in daily life. We often move too quickly, minds crowded with worries. We assume there will always be time, goals, expectations, that the people we love will always be there. That opportunities can wait. Life, however, has a quiet but relentless way of reminding us that nothing is permanent. One of humanity's greatest mistakes is becoming accustomed to presence, to care, to patience, to silent love. We assume tomorrow will look like today. We delay words that matter. We forget to say thank you. We postpone embraces, and without realizing it, we let moments pass that will never return. This lesson extends beyond romantic love, to family, friendships, even health. Many only begin to care for their bodies when they fail. Only seek their parents when silence becomes unbearable. Only value a relationship once the other has chosen to leave. Loss, painful as it is, becomes a harsh but honest teacher. To value what we have means to be present. To look without judgment. To listen deeply. To accept that people are imperfect, that love is not always easy. And that caring for a relationship requires daily effort, not grand gestures, but small, consistent acts. An ending without guarantees. The final lesson is not about avoiding pain, but about learning before it arrives. About valuing people while they are here, treating love as fragile, because it is. Speaking today, not tomorrow. Only then, when time moves forward as it inevitably will, can we look back without regret and say that we truly knew how to love.